Hola e bienvenidos de volta aos Paddocks. We are back in Interlagos for one of my personal favorites races, the Brazilian Grand Prix. And what a weekend it was, y'all. But we'll get into that in a little bit. And on today's episode, we got Edo, myself, Melissa, and Chelsea behind the scenes. So now sit back and relax and let's get started with some circuit updates. Now, there was some, for lack of a better word, minor track changes this year. And I'm exaggerating when I say minor because there was a lot. So the biggest one was that the track and the pit lane had been fully resurfaced not too long ago. We'll get into how that was affecting the whole weekend. And there was some grass pavers in turn 7 on the left-hand side and the right-hand side that had been replaced with concrete. So there was some new debris fence between turn 13 and turn 14 on the left-hand side, and new debris fence between turn 14 and turn 1 on the left-hand side that had been replaced with a whole new fence and new openings installed in turn 1, the runoff, and in turn 15 on the right-hand side. And last but not least, a new opening installed at the start finish on the right-hand side. Like I said, there was a lot. So let's go into some of my favorite things to talk about is the fun pre-race stuff that goes into the race weekend. So one of the things that I want to start off with is Lewis's special helmet for the weekend, paying homage to his idol Senna. I love the helmet, the colors. I just love the Brazilian colors and like the flag in general. So it was just nice seeing how he put that to his helmet, and he just finally has one for a special race at his second home. So, like, why not?
And on it being Lewis's second home race and his idol Senna, he was actually able to drive Senna's 1990 McLaren, which must have been so special. Like driving that car around Interlagos when it was the car that Senna won the GP with. So special. But what really brought it home for me was that on Lewis's white race suit, there was both the UK and the Brazilian flag next to his name on account of him being a dual citizen, I'm imagining, which is just chef's kiss, especially because F1 drivers are not allowed to drive or represent two countries at the same time, making this extra special.
And going on the trend of using the Brazilian colors and everything like that, Ocon had a cool one with that like nice blue that's on the flag and like with his own touches. But what really was a kicker was just how he was just going by Ocozinho, which is a really common like Brazilian thing. They add the Inho to the end of the names. But I just like how he like played into it. It was just a lot of fun. Like I think he even had like his own jersey, and then on the back, like it was like the soccer kit and everything. Like that was really neat.
Especially with how the weekend unfolded for him as well as Pierre. But we'll get into that in a second. Another one that had a special helmet was Oscar. And honestly, it was so cute, especially how he used the Android bot to tell a story, or at least that's what he said happened in his tweet. I could not for the life of me figure out the story that the helmet slash bot was supposed to tell on the helmet. But if anyone knows or was able to figure it out, leave it in the comments because I really want to know now after seeing his tweet. But from special helmets, we also had a special appearance. We had Seb Vettel attending the race. And he wasn't just there randomly. He was there because actually on the Thursday, or actually leading up to the Thursday, he, with other volunteers, actually built a replica, like a, dare I say, life size, like that you can actually like walk into, replica of one of Senna's most famous helmets, like the yellow one with like the blue and stripes and stuff. And on that Thursday, he invited all the drivers, and I think like even like one or two reserve drivers showed up to like inspect the helmet, like take pictures, go inside, because apparently on the inside there was also like some historical information about Senna, as well as his the cleanup efforts, because that helmet was made out of trash. So that was very cute. And honestly, the pictures that came out of that Thursday, it very much gave Mama Duck leading the way with all of her ducklings behind as they were walking to the installation, which again, super cute. Super cute that the grid just shows up for Seb whenever he does something. And then, of course, we also had Max's penalty, of course, from Mexico that was taking effect. And we had a super sub situation because it was announced at the start of the weekend that at that point, K-Mag was sick, and Ollie Behrman would take over his Friday duties at that point, but it ended up actually being the whole weekend because K-Mag was just too sick to drive.
Now, as you know, on spring weekends we only have one practice session. And again, as I mentioned earlier, there was the whole track was like resurfaced and everything, so it's just really interesting how it just unfolds for the following sessions. Now, your top three out of FP1 was a wild card. We had Lando in P1, which of course is not that surprising, followed by Russell, and the biggest surprise out of all of them, Ollie Behrman in P3. It's just like Haas has been really coming back to life recently, and it's been really nice to see.
It feels especially like that in the hands of Ollie, it seems, because he has now driven that car in two race weekends, like full race weekends. Because remember, when K-Mag was banned, he also stepped up. And I feel like on one hand, it goes to show how many improvements they made throughout the season, but also it's hopefully, fingers crossed, a good indication as to where they will be next year, especially with Ollie stepping into that car next year. And it's just good practice for him, which I love. And it also goes to show that, in all likelihood, giving Ollie that seat, even if I was skeptical when it was announced, is a good thing. We'll see now how Esteban will do in that car next year.
Now, going into the sprint quali and race, the quali was not so much action packed, but your starting three for the sprint is Oscar in P1, followed by Lando, and then Charles. Now, there was a little scandal between, I wouldn't say scandal, but people were speculating between Oscar and Lando, but we'll leave that to the socials. Now, going into the sprint race, Stroll, Zhou, and Alonso are all starting from the pits.
Indeed, they were. And that was all because they took new parts after Parc Ferme. As for the Astons, they took new bodywork, meaning suspension and bodywork specifications. Basically, they took the same specs, honestly. And as for Joe, while he qualified dead last, he figured there's no harm in just changing the setup as well on his car, because he didn't really lose a spot. The only spot he was at then was behind the Astons in the pit lane. But as for the race, to me, the funniest part was when Max was annoyed at Charles for making mistakes, yet using Charles making those mistakes to pass him for P3. It was just so typical. I feel like Max can't drive well if he's not complaining.
Now, the papaya rules did come out to play this weekend, and the team ordered for Oscar to give Lando DRS and eventually having them swap positions. And I mean, it wouldn't be Brazil with some drama, right? Because a yellow flag came out and then a virtual safety car came into play.
Plus, Hulkenberg DNF'd.
You know, Haas likes to spice it up a little bit. But your top eight finish was Lando in P1, followed by Oscar, then Max, Charles, Carlos, George, Pierre, and Checo in P8. However, Max was noted for a safety car infringement.
And he wasn't just noted, he actually received a 5-second penalty and 1 penalty point for that infringement, meaning he dropped just outside of the podium and was demoted to P4, meaning Charles was elevated to P3.
Now, quali. You had us waiting for a good 2 hours to the point where it was just postponed to Sunday morning due to the rain. Us East Coast people had to be up at 5:30 in the morning. Us West Coast PGB girls had to be up like around like 2:30. So it was not fun to wait for 2 hours, but I mean it was worth it because it was just straight chaos.
Yeah, I mean, making us wait on Saturday, not fun, especially because I had things to do. But at the same time, chaos. And who doesn't love chaos? Because this is actually, fun fact, the first time since 2019, there it was, dare I say, Japan, that this happened. And actually, it could have gotten even crazier because the backup plan to quali not happening on Sunday morning was that they would take the final standings of FP1 because remember, we only had one practice session. And that would have been very, dare I say, similar to sprint qualifying.
I mean, if you ask me, they should have stuck with what you were talking about, having the standings from FP1 and have that as a starting grid. But that's me, because why not have something different? And I mean, quali was just questionable on why they still held it because during the first session, it literally barely started and a yellow flag came out because Liam Lawson had locked up and went into the runoff. But luckily, he was able to get back on track. And literally seconds later, the same thing happened to Zhao. I mean, it you can just see where this is going. And then literally just under 9 minutes in the session, and Franco is in the barriers bringing out a red flag. It was kind of scary, but he is okay, thankfully.
Honestly, when I saw all of these, dare I say, less experienced drivers go off and or hit the barriers or something in that session, I was just like reminded of the fact that it in the rain, nothing matters anymore except for one thing, experience. Cause like you can't really can and can't practice driving in the rain. Like for example, if you grew up in a country where it didn't rain often and were karting in that country or even doing single seaters in that country, you just didn't get to experience rain. And Max's quote from what I don't even remember when he said this now, but He was at one point asked way back why he was so good in the wet. And his answer straight up was, because I'm Dutch. And honestly, it makes so much sense in my brain, especially in situations like this where people that don't know a car or just don't have as much experience with changing weather conditions just don't know how to handle it because you can't really practice for it.
And out of Q1, you got Lewis, no comment with that one, followed by Ollie, Franco, Nico, and Joe. Now, again, Q2 was straight chaos once again because George goes for a quick spin, literally, and he brought a yellow flag for like a quick hot second. Then, unfortunately, Carlo bends in the barriers, bringing out the second red flag of the session. Again, he is okay. And I think we're at the third red flag of just in quali, and it's right before the end of the session where Lance went off track and hit the barriers. Again, thankfully, he is okay as the other drivers. Now, out of this session, we got Bottas, Max. So remember with Max, he got a 5 grid penalty. So he will be starting in P17, followed by Perez, Sainz, and Gasly. Now, what's wild about this is that both Red Bulls are out this session, but both V carbs go onto the final quality session. Who had that on their bingo card this time around?
Sorry, dealing with multiple screens and a cursor, not fun. Anyway, um, the rain truly said, you want change? Let's change things up because none of this was on my bingo card. And I mean, I gave you guys a spiel about experience in the rain is what wins out. Well, that's debatable with how Q2 turned out, or even Q1, dare I say.
Now, going into Q3, once again, another red flag. This time, Fernando finds himself in the barriers. Once again, he is okay. We got to make sure that everyone's okay, so it's important to mention it. Now, the fifth, yes, you heard that right, fifth, number 5, red flag is out. Albon has crashed, nasty, nasty crash, but once again, all is good. Now, at this point, a few yellow flags, okay, sure, but 5 red flags, perhaps resurfacing the track this close to the race just wasn't a good idea.
Maybe not, but the V carbs definitely took advantage with Yuki in P3 and Liam in P5.
So, your top 10 going into the Brazilian Grand Prix is as follows: Lando on pole, followed by George in P2, Yuki, as Edo had mentioned, in P3, literally screaming for that moment, followed by Ocon in fourth, then Liam in P5, Charles in P6, and then Alex in P7, Oscar in P8, Fernando in P9, and finishing out the top 10, you got Lance Stroll. Now, going into the race, literally just like a few hours later, again, Sunday just felt so long, if you ask me. It was just a mess. It was wild because Williams was not able to fix Alex's car in time, so he was not able to race today. Very interesting how that turns out because we know what happened with Williams earlier in the season, swapping or deciding which driver drives for whatever reason. And Carlos was also doing a pit lane start that race.
Yeah. The Williams decision, I mean, maybe they just didn't want more backlash after earlier this season, especially from the Argentine fans, since it is kind of Franco's home race, or at least the closest race to Argentina there is. But besides that, also hats off to the Aston mechanics for fixing 2 cars so fast. I'm sure Lawrence will give them a very nice bonus for this.
Now we know they definitely get some good big bucks for working in that team. I mean, Lawrence just gives that vibes that he takes good care of his people as well too. Now, keeping in the family, during the formation lap, Lance beached himself after losing grip. I just hurt for the mechanics. That's all.
Yeah, that fixed car didn't last long, and ouch. That's all I'm gonna say. Those mechanics,
Ouch indeed, because then afterwards it was an aborted start, and literally this only happens like from time to time. I think this is my like second time seeing this as a fan of the sport, but this is usually when the drivers do one more formation lap. It counts towards the total anyways, and all the mechanics come back out onto the grid while they're just taking out the drivers who beach crashed, whatever. In this case, Lance's car off the track.
yeah, I mean, that race start very much was chaos because, as Mel said, aborted starts don't usually happen. I mean, the last one I can recall was Monza last year, and that wasn't as chaotic as this one because while they like after an aborted start you do another formation lap, that's like technically the procedure. They actually didn't 100%, like some drivers started actually doing that formation lap before they were told to do the formation lap. So that added a whole other issue to the scenario. And if that wasn't enough, also the confusion as to where to line up, such as Franco by accident lining up in P14 instead of P16 where he was supposed to because of those two cars that just weren't there. I feel like one of the only people that lined up, dare I say, correctly at the back, because I mean, it's a domino effect. If one person misses their grid spot, the other people behind them go off of that person, oftentimes was Max, like laying up correctly. And I'm actually surprised because lining up in the wrong spot, it usually means some sort of consequence from the stewards. And I'm actually surprised I haven't seen anything about that. Maybe because it was so many people, they were just like, let's leave it as is.
I mean, to be fair, I probably would get confused too if no one's telling me where to go, but that's just me. But I mean, the stewards are another thing interesting going on because the race hasn't even started, you guys, and Lando was noted by the stewards for a false start. Like it was just there was just a lot of questions going into the race.
I mean, as Hinch said, F1 2024, expect the unexpected. From chaotic starts to Max not winning a race since like what, June?
Now, after lights out, we had a little plot twist because George is now leading the race.
And Checo was almost out on lap one, too. But thankfully, he could kind of right himself and rejoin. And that wasn't all of it, because Max, very quickly into the race, was already up to 10th from 17th after a very slight battle with Lewis. Like, Max was just picking the back of the grid off like it was for fun. Because remember, because of the rain, the stewards decided to not enable DRS. So he was literally doing this just because it was Max. He was just driving, and everyone was like, we don't know what we're doing. And we're getting out of his way, I guess. Or not, at least not putting up a fight.
I did enjoy seeing that wheel to wheel action with Lewis. That was a lot of fun. I missed watching that. However, Drama, drama, drama again because Ollie had received a 10-second penalty for his collision with Franco. And then a yellow flag and a virtual safety car came out to clear Nico's car, but he was able to get himself back on track. Um, that gets interesting, and you'll see it in just a second because we then had some pit stop drama with the rain. Everyone just started pitting and taking advantage of the safety car, and it was just straight chaos. However, Mercedes had been reported to the stewards for adjusting their tire pressure.
Like, I don't know if it's me, but I feel like this season there's a lot more finger pointing than there was last season. Like, I feel like because it's way closer of a championship this year, everyone's like, did they do something wrong? They did something wrong. Let's report them to the stewards. And I don't know how to feel about it, honestly. Because while I love chaos, it also feels like petty. But that's besides the point. I just love chaos at the same time. And someone that thrives in chaos is Esteban because he was leading the race. And as his win in Hungary 2021 illustrated, he's comfortable at the top, especially if it stems from chaos.
And keeping with the theme, straight chaos, there was another 10-second penalty given to Oscar for yet another collision with Liam. And a safety car came out at this point in the race due to rainy conditions because literally it was raining cats and dogs, like literally pouring to the point where like you could. I mean, to me, it looked like you could. I wouldn't be able to see the car in front of me. I can barely see the car in front of me when I'm driving on the highway over here. But it was just a lot, and it was scary.
Honestly, it gave Spa 2021. And to me, that is just scary because while I do understand why they waited until it was truly pouring to bring out the safety car, because let's be real, rain adds spice. Because the track becomes a slip and slide essentially. It truly feels like they went to, and dare I say, slightly over the limit in terms of conditions.
No, they really did. You know, they like to do it just for suspense, just for a different word, because yet another red flag of the weekend was brought out, and this time it was Franco crashed into the barriers. He is okay. I don't know about the William mechanics. Someone reach out to them and make sure they're okay because I surely would not be.
I mean, the footage I saw of their garage right after Franco crashed, heartbreaking. Like, I remember seeing this one mechanic just get up, close his folding chair, and literally just carry it away. And if that doesn't say a lot, I don't know what does. And honestly, with the rain conditions and as soon as Franco crashed, I was like transported back to Spa 2021 when Seb was yelling for red flag just before Lando crashed. It feels eerily similar, just without Seb yelling or anyone basically, as far as we know, yelling for a red flag. And honestly, I wish someone would have, or at least that we would have seen it.
Now, allegedly, I can't confirm nor deny this actually happened, but you mentioned that Edo, and I remember seeing some stuff circulating around. I think it was Twitter, where Ollie was actually like on the radio, like asking for like a red flag or like talking about like the conditions because he essentially was just like scared. And I think I again don't quote me on this. This is all allegedly because it wasn't like a verified source, but apparently he like said something along the lines like he doesn't want to die. And it brought me back to Japan last year where We had that very, very close incident with Pierre that was very, very scary. So it's like, how much risk are we willing to take, you guys? But, anyways, remember how we mentioned something will come back to Nico? Well, at this point in the race, a black flag came out for Nico. He was noted for returning on track with assistance, and he had been disqualified.
Well, 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 that rejoin didn't age well. But also, first black flag we've seen during a race for a while. Usually, disqualifications, especially these days because the drivers have the right to respond, don't usually happen during the race. They mostly happen these days when it is a slam dunk. And while I do believe the stewards when they say someone helped him get back on track, I haven't seen any footage. So give us receipts, FIA.
They actually showed it on the F1 TV international broadcast. They actually had stewards pushing the car and everything. And then I guess like he was just like, actually, I can go and keep the car moving. But they actually have footage of like them like pushing the front wing like down or away from them, I guess. But yeah, it came out like at one point or not. I just don't know if it depends on like the broadcast channel you're watching and everything. But I remember seeing, I was just like, oh, so there's that assistance.
Yeah, I definitely didn't see that. Granted, I was on F1 TV, like the regular one, the not global one, and it didn't show it. Thanks for letting me know because I was like, FIA, are you lying? When I heard the black flag. And of course, then we also got a very funny, dare I say, message that will turn out to also not age well from Carlos to his team regarding his inters because everything, like stats wise, for the viewers showed that he was on a new set of inters. But I don't know what he saw on his dashboard or what he like felt while driving with those tires. But he asked the team whether it was an old set of inters because apparently they didn't feel new, and the team was just dead silent. I guess they were like, did we put an old set of inters on him? Or did we not? Confusion, as usual for Ferrari. And of course, then the slip and slide continued.
And indeed it did, because I think they actually did put on the wrong inters because another DNF. Carlos has spun off into the barriers.
As I said, that message didn't age well. But of course, it was also the second time that he went off today.
Again, it was just straight chaos because after the safety car restart, it was just insane to say the least because literally Lando lost a lot of grid positions after going off into the grass. It just looked like everyone was also in the mood to like cut grass with their cars. So like they were just going off into that area. But McLaren had made the scandalous swap to help their driver Lando with the drivers championship because as you know, it's between him and Max. And it was interesting how the papaya rules had come out to play this weekend. So your top 10 for the weekend, you have Max in P1, followed by Ocon in P2, Pierre in P3. Yes, you heard that right. That P3 is correct. Followed by George in P4, Charles in P5, Lando, Oscar, Yuki, Liam, and rounding out the top 10, you got Lewis.
And while the top three was unusual, we did have a usual fastest lap for Max. And because he did such a good recovery drive, he also got driver of the day, which hats off. It was well deserved.
Truly hats off. My personal opinion, I would have given driver of the day to one of the Alpine boys, but that is just me. But all I thought with him getting the fastest lap is just that Mad Max is back because, every point counts at this point in the championship. And also good for Alpine getting that double podium. It's actually the first time we've had two French drivers on the podium since 1997. Congrats to them. Very happy to see it. Literally was screaming for them to like get to the finish line and get that podium finish because like they deserve it. And it was just such a chaotic weekend and race. I, for one, am kind of glad it is over.
Honestly, Mel, same. Don't get me wrong, I love chaos. I love spice. I love long races. But at the same time, there is a point where you think enough is just enough. It's like, enough slices! And I definitely had enough laps, especially after all the chaos, after all the red flags, and everything else. And also, fun fact, in that whole 1997 statistic for the French driving podium, it was also actually a P2 and 3 with Oliver Panis in P2 and Jean Alesi in P3 at the Spanish GP that year.
Now, enough of this chaotic weekend because honestly, let's move on from what is that. Because now we have a short break and then we're off to Sin City, Las Vegas. We're in the last three races, y'all, and I'm kind of actually sad it's close to the end because, I mean, what a race season it has been. But, anyways, as for my predictions, I think Max will take the win here. He got his momentum back in Brazil, so I can see him just keep it going for Vegas. I mean, at this point, he's probably like, I just want to get the points so I can be declared championship or be declared champion and, just keep on driving for funsies. Now, as for P2 and P3, I think Lando and possibly Carlos in those two spots. I don't know why. It's just a gut feeling. I'm also just going off straight vibes. I can see the three of them just standing up there. I am hoping for a banger of a race weekend though, because last year did deliver, and I do love a good night race.
Don't forget, it's a street circuit as well. And that combo, chef's kiss, most of the time. But as Mel said, Sin City. And honestly, for predictions, there's never been a better time for my magic dice to come out than Vegas predictions. So let's roll it. P1, we have Lewis. P2, Liam. And P3, Carlos. Is that realistic? Maybe the P1 and 3 are, but at the same time, we remember Vegas last year and Carlos's bad luck with that drink cover. And so I don't even know whether that P3 is realistic. And would I love to give Liam a P2 podium? Yes. But at the same time, he's never raced in Vegas. It's a street circuit and everything else. So, Magic Dice, I think you have a 66.6% success rate, but at the same time, it's Vegas. So, no, why not take a gamble on Liam in P2 as well?
We all know the true power of being Delulu does come through sometimes. And to close out the episode, we have a moment of the weekend for you. Of course, it's the Alpine double podium. Iconic. I know you guys have all seen the posts about them with that throwback picture from when they were little in their karting days to their interviews now. If you ask me, it looks like they may be a little piece between them, but I loved it. They deserved it. It was really nice seeing them up there once again, especially together.
Yeah. Esteban, I think I can't remember whether it was on Instagram or TikTok, but his comment or text saying just two boys from Normandy sharing the same dream, chef's kiss. But thanks for joining us in the paddock though. As always, make sure to let us know your thoughts on the race on our socials. Everywhere we are Paddock Girls Podcast, except for Twitter/X/ whatever you want to call it, where we are Paddock Girls Pod. And of course, as always, bonus points if you drop your pre-race predictions in the comments. We'll see you at the next race in Vegas after a short race break. For the start of the final triple header of the season, where we go racing in Qatar and Abu Dhabi after Vegas. See ya!
Bye.